look at that. What are the odds? I was just about to say, I don't see too many 450RLs or 450Ls around town, but look at that. First rear ride, and this guy comes up right up next to me on a 450L. How cool. Nice bike. I was just thinking to myself, I don't see these around because I literally bought this yesterday. And then here you come rolling up behind me.
That's awesome. My cousin has one too.
What's that?
My cousin and my friend have one too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. How are you liking it?
I love it.
Good to hear. All right. So our trip meter now shows 62.7 miles, so I have put a little bit on it and definitely have some thoughts. So I don't even think I actually said specifically what the bike was in the last video. I kind of hinted at it, and if you know you're aware of dirt bikes or dual sports, you probably know what it is. But for those that don't, this is a 2022 Honda CRF450RL, which is basically their street legal version in the 450 lineup. It's basically kind of a tamed, detuned, street legal version of the CRF450X, I think, is probably the easiest one to compare it to, even though it says 450RL rather than 450XL or anything like that. It actually shares a lot of its components with the CRF450X line. So why not start with all the things that I like in the 60 plus miles that I've ridden this. First thing I will say that I'm really loving is the ergonomics and the comfort there. This is set up really, really nicely, and I don't really think I have to change much to make it perfect for my preference. The seat height is great. It's a little tall for, you know, maybe for other people, but being a tall person myself, it's perfect. The chassis is, while it's a little wider than the CRF450R, it's still really narrow, and so it feels really nice. Like if I stand up on it, like my knees are pretty close to each other. It's not that far apart, so it's very manageable there. Even the bars, although I'm not quite sure what bend they put from the factory, it actually feels pretty good. The bar height is pretty good. When I stand up, I don't feel like I'm leaning over the bike to reach the bars, so I don't even think I need bar risers on this. We'll see. Also with the ergonomics is the suspension, and the suspension is more or less the same on the 450R, so it's not exactly set up for street. They have changed a couple of things that I assume kind of are oriented streetwise, but man, it feels so good. Honda went to pretty great lengths in this to make it as comfortable as possible for street use, even though it's primarily going to be a dual sport. You know, they want to have dirt in mind, but they're also kind of thinking about the street rider, and so because of that, they have certain things like the tires are mostly, you know, kind of road oriented, so they do have some knobbies, but it's pretty smooth actually. They also did a lot of things to quieten the bike down for highway use, to kind of get rid of any annoying noises or vibrations, things like that. So actually they probably even went to too great of lengths. There's engine bafflings on both sides. There's covers that are lined with foam to cut down the engine noise. There's like materials or resin or something that's in the swing arm as a sound dampener, and on the sprockets they have rubber to eliminate any, you know, excess chain noise. So all of that combined, it's really quiet. There's one comfort element though that I don't love, and actually it's going to be in my hate category, and that's the seat. This seat is god-awful for street. I'm already uncomfortable, and I've only been on the bike like 15 miles today. A lot of people have compared this seat to a 2x4, and I can see exactly what they're talking about. It's just, it's too much like the CRF450R. I understand that they're going to share a lot of the same parts, But you'd think with a bike that's more oriented for street and in general long-term use, you'd think they'd give a little bit more comfort. This is barely any foam in there. It's minimal, and it's covered in grip material, which doesn't help, doesn't add to the comfort at all. So that's definitely something that I'll need to switch out pretty soon. One of the other things I really like about this, and hopefully I'll be able to show it, there it is with the green light, which is the snappy throttle. It feels so nice. It's pretty immediate throughout the rev range, actually a lot on the lower end of things. So you could be really bogging this in low RPM, high gear, and just roll on the throttle, and it'll give you power. Although one of the biggest issues that I've found in researching this bike before I purchased it online was the throttle response. That's kind of the hot topic with this bike. As a little bit of backstory for those that don't know, when this first came out, they were experiencing a lot of flameout issues. It kind of would cut fuel to the bike if you immediately let off the throttle, or if you're in a kind of a low speed situation where you're on and off the throttle a lot, and it would cut out. So a lot of people have spoken up about that and complained about it. They made some tweaks to this one in particular. So in 2021, when they called it the RL, they did say they made some tweaks to it, address that. So it might be that what I'm experiencing is not what people of a 2019 or a 2020 were experiencing. But the comments on this topic online are all over the map. There's some people saying that it's 100% totally fine. There's no issue with it whatsoever. It's basically the same as you'd see with any other bike. Honda's not doing anything wrong here. Just, you know, be a better rider and learn how to use it. And then there's other people that are saying this is a death trap. It caused them to fall over, or, you know, it flamed out on them 10 times. The range is everywhere, and I think it's somewhere in the middle. For the time being, it's totally manageable. Yes, it's a little jerky. Not herky-jerky, but just beef jerky. What else do I want to say about this? One of the other things that I think I'll say is that, and probably to do with being street legal, it does feel a little choked up. Like, it gives a good throttle response, but it does feel somewhat hesitant. And the bike does feel a little hot, although I'm going pretty slow right now, so that might be one of those things too that this bike could do with, is a little bit more breathing room. Handling on this, I'd say, is pretty standard. It's kind of hard to test handling on a dual sport on street. Much more appropriate to do that in the dirt, but we don't really have too much dirt around here unless I want to jump on the beach and then get tackled by lifeguards. Yeah, it definitely does seem to be running hot. I mean, yes, I'm only going like 15 miles an hour right now, but it comes with built-in leg warmers. I can kind of see now how, if you're in a tight trail or something like that, where you're really, really on and off the throttle and fingering the clutch and all that stuff, that it could be a little annoying and it could even cut out. I guess it's just one of those things that depends on how you ride the bike. I think ultimately for me it shouldn't be an issue. Where I live, even in the off-road setting, it's pretty much wide open desert, so there's not really a lot of tight technical forest riding or anything like that, trail riding. It's pretty much just open desert, washes. You can gather a lot of speed, and it's not technical enough that you have to be, you know, in first gear the whole time. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for my style of riding. Certainly not going to be an issue on the street. Oh, here's potentially a negative that I just thought of, was the service intervals. So another thing that people were complaining about is that this has extreme, well, comparatively extreme service intervals, where it's every 600 miles you have to change the oil, and then every 1800 miles you have to check the valves. But I can see where they're coming from. Let's be honest, this is based on more the competition side of things rather than like the 250L and the 300L. So it's a little confusing there. And then also, you know, Honda want to be as conservative as possible when they're providing these recommended service intervals, and they don't know what your riding style is. You can easily stretch that out if you're only going to just kind of ride this around the street mellow and not going to be racing it. And then on the other hand, there are people that are going to be racing this bike, you know, on enduros and cross-country trips and all sorts of things. So they have to cover for everybody, and everyone's riding situation is different. So of course they're going to go with the more extreme side of things to be as safe as possible, because it's not going to damage your bike if you change the oil every 600 miles like they say, but really you're not putting that much stress on the bike. So I think it's pretty safe where you can stretch this out to, you know, maybe 1,000 or so. And let's be real, it's an oil change. It's not that bad. Oil is pretty cheap. It doesn't take that much anyway, so it's only a few bucks. So I think overall service is just fine. I'm not too worried about it. At the end of the day, it's a Honda. And that's one of the other reasons why I really wanted this bike. I think they've done a great job with their other bikes. I've had a lot of good experiences with Hondas. I've had a lot of good experiences with CRFs. In fact, my first bike ever was a CRF450R. It was a 2002. I loved that bike. It was fantastic. I had it kitted out with a desert kit, desert tank, so it had like 3.5 gallons or something like that. It was fantastic. And then I got another one. I got a 2009, as I said earlier, with fuel injection. It was fantastic as well. And ever since I got rid of that bike, I was always regretting it and just kicking myself for getting rid of that CRF 450. And I've always thought I need to get one again. But, you know, circumstances change, life changes, and I didn't really find myself going out to the desert and riding off-road as much as I used to. I pretty much 100% stopped going to tracks, and so that changed my riding more towards street stuff, and didn't really give myself a good reason to get a dirt bike again. But then this came out, and it's the perfect answer. Uh-oh. I just noticed that we have a gas light on. And there's not a gas station around here. We might have to find out the hard way here what the fuel range is. Actually, we won't, because I have no idea how much gas was in this. I have not filled it up yet. I'm gonna go find a gas station. And there you have it. This is my first impression, at least on the street. I'll obviously have to go ride this in the dirt for sure. As it is just for street use, I think it's fantastic. I love it. Yes, it could use some extra comfort, and it could be a little less jerky, but other than those small details, I'm perfectly satisfied. And I definitely have ideas in mind for what I want to do to this bike. You know it's getting a supermoto setup, that's for sure. So until those parts come in, I'll just enjoy it as it is, and I'll see you when that happens.